Last year, the most profitable thing Snap-on sold was not the wrench in your hand. It was the loan you signed to hold it. Snap-on runs a finance arm, and in 2025, that finance arm earned about 68 cents of operating profit on every dollar it took in, a 68.2% operating margin. The famous part of the company, the red trucks, the chrome ratchets, the wrenches forged in Tennessee, earned about 22 cents of every dollar, around 21.7%. Same company. One side sells you steel, the other side sells you time at interest, and the side selling time is more than 3 times as profitable as the side selling tools. That is not a rumor off a message board. It is sitting in Snap-on's own annual report, the one it files with the SEC, free for anyone to open and read tonight. So picture the truck at your bay, the one that pulls up on a Tuesday with the good coffee in the drawer that rolls like glass. Picture the roll cab you financed, the diagnostic scanner you are still paying on, the box of tools you bet your livelihood on. Every one of those handshakes runs back through that finance arm. And here's the question that pulls the whole thing apart. How is the man driving that truck, the dealer you have trusted for a decade, going under at the exact moment the company behind him is posting the best finance profit in its history? How can the salesman be drowning while the paper he floats has never been worth more? By the end of this, you will see how the machine is built, who is holding the debt, and what happened the last time this whole arrangement was dragged into a federal courtroom. And I'm going to hand you one tool brand, owned by Snap-on itself, that you can buy tonight with no truck, no route markup, and no loan. Stay with me. But this story does not start with the dealer. It starts with the paper. Inside Snap-on Incorporated, the parent company, there is a division almost no customer has ever heard of. It is called Snap-on Credit. Its job, in the SEC filing's own words, is to originate extended-term finance and contract receivables on sales of Snap-on's products sold through the U.S. franchisee network. In plain terms, when a technician finances a tool off the truck, Snap-on Credit is the one that writes the loan. In 2025, that division brought in $412.9 million in revenue and turned $281.8 million of it into operating profit. Sit with that ratio for a second. 2 out of every $3 that walked in the door dropped straight to the bottom line. Now set it next to the tool business. The Snap-on Tools Group, the trucks and the franchisees, and the Chrome sold $1,964.9 million in tools and earned $426.3 million doing it. Bigger revenue by almost 5 times, but only about $145 million more profit. A lending desk 1/5 the size threw off 2/3 the profit of the entire tool empire. And this is not a one-year fluke you can wave off. In 2024, that same finance arm ran an even fatter margin, 69.1%. The structure holds year after year. Across the whole company, Snap-on posted net earnings of $1,016.9 million that year, about $19.19 for every share, one of the strongest years in its history. Better than 1 in 5 of every operating profit dollar came from the lending desk rather than the wrenches. When Wall Street looks at Snap-on, this low-profile financing arm is a big part of what it is paying for. Now, a fair question. What rate is the technician paying? Here is the one honest answer, and I am going to say it once, up front. Snap-on does not publish the interest rate on a working man's tool loan. There is no consumer number to quote, and anyone who hands you one off a form is guessing. So every rate in this video is the single figure the company itself discloses to the SEC, the average yield it earns across that entire loan book. That year, the number came to 17.6%. Hold on to it. It comes back, because look at how big the book is. By the end of the year, Snap-on was carrying $1,962.5 million in customer tool loans. Put that beside the tool sales one more time. The company sold $1,964.9 million in tools that year. The loan book is the same size as the entire tool business. Every wrench, every socket, every truck, 1 full year of all of it, matched almost dollar for dollar by what customers still owe. And the market knows what that paper is worth. Snap-on carries those loans net at $1,889 million. Their fair value, what an outside buyer would pay for the right to collect them, is $2,166 million dollars. That is a $277 million premium. A wrench loses value the moment it leaves the truck. The loan that financed it does the opposite. The market prices that book of paper $277 million above what it cost to create. And the company is not slowing down. In that 1 year alone, it wrote $1,120.9 million in new financing, over $1 billion in fresh loans in a single year on hand tools, and that was down about 5% from the year before. The average one runs about 4 years. You can buy a ratchet on a 4 year plan. You will be making payments on that ratchet longer than some tires last on the truck you use it on. The chrome dulls, the teeth wear, maybe it walks off a job site, but you still owe every payment on it just the same until the loan is paid in full. The same finance arm that makes Snap-on the envy of Wall Street is wrapped just as tight around the man who sells the tools. And that is where this stops being a story about a rich company and starts being a story about a salesman going under. So who is the man driving the truck? Here's the first thing customers get wrong about him. He does not work for Snap-on. Snap-on runs about 4,700 tool routes worldwide, about 3,400 of them here in the United States. And according to the same annual report, company-owned routes make up only about 5% of that total, which means about 95% of the trucks you have ever waved down are not driven by employees. They are driven by independent franchisees, small business owners, men who signed a contract and bet their savings on a territory. And how does a man become a Snap-on dealer? He borrows from Snap-on. The company spells it out in the filing. Through Snap-on Credit, financing is available to new franchisees for their van lease, for their working capital, and in the company's own words, for loans to help enable new franchisees to fund the purchase of the franchise itself. So walk that through. The finance arm lends him the money to buy into the franchise, finances the van he will drive, and funds the working capital to stock his shelves. He is already in debt to Snap-on Credit before he sells a single ratchet. How much debt? When this whole arrangement last got dragged into court, the required buy-in for initial inventory was steep enough that the company later agreed to cut it from about $83,750 down to about $74,000. And that reduced figure, about $74,000 of inventory, is what a new dealer finances before the van, before the working capital, before rent, fuel, insurance, or a single dollar of income. Tens of thousands of dollars financed sitting on a truck before the first customer ever climbs the steps. And notice that business financing is a separate loan from the one you signed for at the truck. Snap-on's franchise loans and van leases, what it calls contract receivables, carried an average yield of about 9.1%, and some of those contracts run as long as 10 years. So a dealer can be paying the company for the truck under his feet for a decade, while he is out front trying to sell you a 4-year note on a ratchet. He is not the lender in this story. He is a borrower who happens to hand out loans. But that was just the debt you can see on the company's books. Behind the scenes, there is a second layer, and this one the dealer carries himself. Snap-on's own franchise operations manual, quoted by the tool industry site Tool Guide, describes something called the revolving account. When a technician cannot pay cash and it is too small for a formal Snap-on Credit contract, the dealer floats it. In the manual's framing, the franchisee is, in effect, extending his own credit on a repayment schedule of under 10 weeks, which means when a customer walks off with a $300 tool and never pays, the loss does not fall on Snap-on. It falls on the man who handed the tool over. Snap-on Credit gets paid on the contracts it wrote, and the dealer eats the loss whenever one of his floated tickets goes bad. So follow the money on that one truck. On the big ticket tools, Snap-on Credit is the bank, and it collects that 17.6% yield. On the small stuff, the dealer is the bank, and he collects the unpaid tickets. Either way, the technician is financing his tools. And either way, the one man guaranteed to be squeezed is the fellow in the middle, carrying his own inventory loan on one shoulder and his customers' overdue accounts on the other. Want to know how that squeeze shows up in the numbers? In 2025, Snap-on charged off $82.9 million in finance receivables, wrote them off. That is $82.9 million in tool loans to technicians and shop owners that stopped getting paid in a single year. And that is only the loans the company gave up on. At the end of the year, another $69.2 million of customer tool loans were past due, with $23.7 million of that more than 90 days behind and still sitting on the books, still accruing. Real men, behind on real loans. For wrenches, a lot of them may not even own anymore. And if that number makes you look sideways at the loan paperwork out in your own garage, good. That is why we built the Buy It for Life brand ledger. It is a $29 breakdown of every major tool category, ranked by what a tool costs you per year of service, not what the sticker says and not what the truck's payment book says. Which brands are worth financing, which ones you should only ever buy with cash, and which so-called premium names are selling you the loan more than the steel. The link is down in the description. Now back to the truck, because the hardest part of this is what happens when the truck stops coming. Now watch the trap close. A dealer's territory dries up. A shop on his route shuts its doors. He falls behind on the van, on the working capital, on the inventory he financed. In the end, he hands back the keys and walks away from the road. But the loans do not walk away with him. The franchise debt, the van lease, the working capital, all of it was written by Snap-on Credit. And Snap-on Credit does not tear up a contract because a man quit. In fact, the company's own accounting spells out the ending. A failed franchisee's van lease and franchise loans get written off no later than 180 days after the van and the tools come back. 6 months after he hands it all in, the man who used to be the face of the brand on your route is a line item in the charge-off column. The truck stops coming. The loan keeps coming. A tool can break and a dealership can close its doors, and the debt just holds its own schedule. The loan outlasts the tool. By 2003, that exact arrangement, the dealer, who is also the borrower, landed where these things always land, in a federal courthouse in New Jersey. The case is on the public record. Reeves versus Snap-on Tools Company and Snap-on Credit, filed in the United States District Court for the District of New Jersey. And the very first thing worth noticing is who the plaintiffs were. The settlement agreement filed with the SEC describes them as former franchisees who were also, in the document's own words, borrowers from Snap-on Credit. The people suing were the dealers themselves, and the filing ties their failure straight to the finance arm. They did not just lose a business, they lost the business and kept the loan. What did they allege? And I want to be careful here because this case was settled with no admission of wrongdoing by Snap-on, so every one of these is a plaintiff's allegation and nothing more. The complaint invoked the federal racketeering law known as RICO. It cited the New Jersey Franchise Practices Act. It carried claims of misrepresentation and breach of fiduciary duty. In plain terms, the dealers alleged they had been sold into territories the company had reason to know could not support them. The wrenches on the truck did their job. The debt is what followed these men out of business. One of those stories has a name and a number on it. In a related New Jersey action, a former dealer named Brian Casey alleged the company induced families to invest when it knew a territory was too thin, or that a previous dealer had already failed in that very spot. In one instance, his attorneys alleged the company sold a second franchise to a man who still owed $81,000 on the first. A 2004 arbitration in Casey's matter awarded him $314,608. Again, that is one plaintiff's claim and one arbitrator's finding, not a company admission. But listen to the shape of it. The complaint was never about the quality of the wrenches. In the plaintiff's telling, the debt was the product being sold. Here's how it ended. In 2006, Snap-on settled, and the single most telling term in the whole agreement is what it did to the debt. The company agreed that the debts of the failed former dealers would be, in the settlement's own words, forgiven, released, and forever discharged, with the credit agencies notified. Think about what that tells you. To make these men whole, the settlement did not have to replace a single tool. The one thing it had to wipe out was the loan on their credit reports, because the loan was the thing that had outlived the dealership. The same trap I just walked you through. In writing, 20 years ago, the scale, as reported at the time, was north of $125 million. More than $60 million in debt forgiven, another $38 million paid out, covering about 3,200 current dealers and 2,900 former ones. A federal judge, Dennis Kavanaugh, approved it in October of 2006. But look hard at what the dealers themselves walked away with. A former franchisee could take a flat $1,000 or file a claim for damages capped at $20,000. A current dealer got tool credit and account credit that added up to no more than $9,200. Meanwhile, the agreement set aside up to $13 million for the plaintiff's lawyers. The men who lost their businesses split up thousands of dollars each. Their lawyers were looking at millions. The one part that reached into these men's lives and pulled the weight off was the debt forgiveness, because the debt was the thing that had followed them home. You would think a settlement that size would have rewritten the whole structure. It did not. The trucks rolled the very next morning on the very same model, and every year since, the paper has only gotten bigger. And every dollar of that buy-in, the van, the working capital, the whole stack a new dealer still shoulders today, is financed by the same arm posting, that 68.2% margin, which brings us straight back to the question I opened with. So here is the answer to the puzzle. How is the dealer going under while the company sets finance records? Because the dealer was never the profit center. He is the delivery mechanism. He is the friendly face who carries the truck to your bay, extends the credit, absorbs the defaults, and books the loans onto Snap-on Credit's ledger, where they earn 68 cents on the dollar for someone else. The tools are the bait, the relationship is the hook, and the loan is the catch. The man you have trusted for 10 years is not getting rich off your loyalty. He is a borrower himself, financed by Snap-on Credit and squeezed from both ends. And when his numbers stop working, Snap-on Credit holds his paper the same way it holds yours. Long after the tools have worn out and the dealer is gone, that loan is still on the books. So what do you do about it? I promised you one brand, owned by Snap-on itself, that you can buy with no truck and no loan. Here it is. Its name is Williams. Plenty of technicians have never heard of it, and that is not an accident. Williams is Snap-on's industrial arm. The same corporation that owns your tool truck bought J.H. Williams back in 1993, ran it for years under the Snap-on industrial name, and in 2021 put the Williams name back on the front of the tools. Williams hand tools are forged to industrial spec and sold through distributors, the same suppliers that outfit factories, fleets, and the military. That is the part the truck never mentions. Snap-on already sells industrial-grade steel to people who buy in bulk and negotiate hard, and it sells it without a route, without a revolving account, and without a payment book. There is no truck, no markup for the ride to your bay, and no 4-year plan. You walk up to a counter, or you order it online, and you pay for the tool one time, in cash. And now the math I promised worked out loud, because this is the number the truck never shows you. Take a common 3/8-inch ratchet. Off the Snap-on truck, that ratchet runs around $142 on the street. A gear wrench 120 XP, a well-regarded ratchet you can pull off a shelf at Home Depot or Walmart, runs about $46 to $54. And Williams, Snap-on's own industrial brand, at an industrial supplier like Zorro, runs about $44 to $76. Line those up. Against that gear wrench, the Snap-on badged ratchet costs about 2.5 to 3 times as much, and that is before a single dollar of finance charge is added on top. And Williams, remember, is Snap-on's own industrial brand, and it often lands at half the truck price or less for a tool built to the same industrial standard. Buy that same ratchet on the truck's payment plan instead of paying cash. And at the kind of yield Snap-on books across its loan book, you are not paying $142 anymore. You are paying that price plus interest spread over years for a hand tool whose own maker will sell you a comparable one on a distributor shelf under the Williams name for a fraction of the truck price. It runs deeper than ratchets. Snap-on's torque wrenches are built by a company called CDI, which Snap-on also owns. The CDI badged torque wrench, sold off the shelf without the truck, costs well below the same tool wearing the Snap-on name. A lot of the time you are not paying for better steel. You are paying for the truck, the route, and the financing wrapped around them. Want to feel the finance cost in real dollars? Take a mid-size roll cab. The kind of rolling toolbox plenty of guys carry on a truck plan. Picture one priced around $7,000, and I am using a round, illustrative number here, not a specific quoted price. Finance that at the 17.6% average yield over about 4 years, at about $203 a month, and you do not repay $7,000. You repay closer to $9,750. Almost $2,750 of that is pure finance charge. Spread across the 4 years, that is close to $690 a year, every year, in interest alone. That is the real cost per year the truck never writes on the invoice, and it buys you nothing. Not a better drawer, not a better latch. It is the price of the loan sitting on top of the price of the box, and it lands the same whether the drawers glide like glass or stick like a cheap dresser. So the verdict fits on a sticker. Buy the tool, never sign for it. If a brand can only reach your hands on a payment plan, then the plan is the product and you are the yield. Pay cash, buy once, and if you want Snap-on grade steel without the Snap-on grade loan, the company already sells it to you under a different name at a distributor's counter. It is called Williams. Go look. One last thing, and it matters. None of this is about blaming the man who drives the truck. He is the most trapped person in the whole arrangement. He was financed into a territory, he carries his own inventory loan and his customers' unpaid tickets, and he drives a route that earns its fattest margins for a lending desk he does not own. When his truck stops coming around, the reason is often simpler and sadder than people assume. The paper caught up with him in the end, the same way it is designed to catch up with you. Those tools were real, and so was your loyalty to the man who sold them. The financing wrapped around the both of you is the part that was built to work just like this. If you want the full category by category breakdown, what to buy with cash and what to never finance, the Buy It for Life brand ledger is waiting in the description. But you already have the one line that matters. The next time that truck pulls up with the good coffee and the drawer that rolls like glass, buy what you can pay for outright. Shake the man's hand and leave the paperwork on the seat. Because the most profitable thing Snap-on ever sold was never the wrench in your hand. It was the loan you signed to hold it. And that is the one part of the whole deal you were always free to decline.